It's all good. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company wherever you are in this world, on whatever time of day it is, welcome to the World Storytelling Caravan this evening, or this today in David Thompson's case in Texas, this afternoon or this morning or something. It is the worldwide story round. And hosting, comparing, emceeing, keeping good order. Tonight, from Get a Word in Edgeways, is our very own Mike Rust. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much, John, and welcome to everybody again. Here we are. I'm sat on the Welsh borders here, which is just on the English side of the Welsh border. It's called the Welsh Marsh sometimes, and it's 6:30. By 7 o'clock it'll be dark. Nights are drawing in a bit.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks' time we change our clocks back and things like that, and we're facing the winter. But it is the most beautiful part of the time to be in Shropshire. It's a mystical time. It's a time when J.J.R. Tolkien used to drive round here and think of the Shire. All the colours are going different, and all the trees and all the plants are tucking themselves up as they go to sleep for the winter. So welcome again. So I've already got a bit of a batting order sorted out. So Keith's going to go first, Kath's going to go second, then Heather's going to go third, and we'll take it from there. They're always very, very welcome to always say to me, you've got to come in and I've got to go because I'm so famous and I'm so good and I'm so talented. I have to go to another to do 2 stories on the same night, or whatever you do, that's always fine with me. Absolutely. So I'm going to go to Keith first, who's over in Lincolnshire, Kath, who's over on the West Midlands with us, and then to Heather up in the Highlands, and we'll see where we get from there. So Keith, if you all mute yourselves again, make sure you're muted. I'll check so I am. And away you go, Keith.
Well, hello, everybody. I've been challenged to learn some Viking stories, so this is one of them. Now, Thor, as you know, was a god of thunder. He had a big hammer which he'd crash down on the clouds and create thunder and lightning. And also, in this story, there is Loki. Now, he was the trickster. He was always making jokes and making practical jokes. And that they were on their way to Utgard, the land of the giants. And Thor was going there to challenge them with his strength. And so they set off in Thor's chariot. And normally when you think about a chariot, you think it being drawn by horses, like in Egyptian times and in Roman times. But Thor had to be different. His chariot was drawn by 2 shaggy goats. And there they were thundering along throughout the day. And they got to the end of the day and they were getting tired. It was getting dark. And so Thor said, we must find somewhere to rest for the night. And there was a farm, and there was a farmer's cottage. And they banged on the door, and the farmer opened the door and said, hello. And Thor said, we are 2 weary travellers looking for rest for tonight. Come in, said the farmer. Now, the farmer and his wife were very poor, but they're able to find a place for Thor and Loki to rest and to sleep. And they set before them on the table a meal, but it only consisted of a mouldy loaf of bread and some stale cheese. And Thor said, that's not enough for weary travellers. But I have an idea, I have a solution. And he brought in his 2 goats. And with his hammer, he killed the 2 goats. And then they were able to strip the goats of their hides and lay the skins in the corner and strip the meat off the bones. And so the farmer's wife was able to make them a really delicious goat stew. And they'd laid the hides in the corner of the room to put the bones on afterwards. And Thor said, now don't break any of the bones, but leave them on the hide in the corner. And Thor went off to bed. Now the farmer, he'd like the marrow that's in the bones, and Loki said to him, well, Thor doesn't really mean that. It'll be all right. Don't you worry. You have some marrow out of the bones. And so the farmer broke one of the bones and he tasted all the lovely marrow in the middle of the bones. And then he threw the broken piece of bone with the rest of the bones in the corner of the room on the hide. And they all went to bed. Now, next morning, Thor got up early and he waved his hammer over the bones and they all knit together. And they then were covered with meat and the hides covered them to create or recreate the two goats. And Thor noticed that one of his goats was lame. In a loud voice, he said, "Who broke the bones of one of my goats?" And the rest of them woke up, and the farmer said, I'm sorry, it was me. I just like the marrow out the bones. Oh, no. And Thor was about to kill the farmer, his wife, and his children, but the birds began to sing, and it became a pleasant day, and he thought again about it. And the farmer said, "Well, I'm sorry about this, but please take my two children, my girl and a boy, take them as your servants, and go on your way." And so Thor did that. He said to the farmer, "No, you look after my goats." And they went on their way on foot. There was Thor and Loki and their two children. And they walked and walked and walked and walked until they came to a big ocean. And there on the beach was a boat, sailing boat. And so they pushed it out to sea and they got in the boat and they rowed out a little way and then they put up the sails and they crossed the ocean and came to a beach on the other side. And there beyond the beach was a big forest. And so they made their way through the forest, pushing the leaves to one side until they came to a clearing. And in the clearing, there was a big hall, a big open hall, a big part of a mansion. And it was getting late by that time, so they decided that they would sleep in this hall. Now, this hall had a one big room going off it, and then there was 4 small rooms going off it. And so they were sleeping in the middle of the night, and then they heard this awful snoring sound. And Thor woke up and said, "What is that?" And he went outside, and there was a big giant fast asleep. And Thor, he took his hammer, he threw it at the giant's head. The giant woke up and shook and said, "Oh, some leaves are dropping off the trees." Oh. And he went to sleep again. This made Thor even angry, and he threw his hammer again at the giant's head. And the giant woke up and said, "Oh, there's acorns falling off the tree." Oh, no. And he went to sleep again. And the snoring started again. And Thor, with his hammer, he threw it at the giant's head. And the giant woke up and said, "Oh, there's bird droppings. Oh no, what's this?" And he looked down and he saw Thor. And out from the hall came Loki and the 2 children. And the giant said, "You've been sleeping in my glove." And the giant's name was Skrymir. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And Thor said, "Well, we're off to the land of the giants, to Utgard, to pitch my strength against them." And so Skrymir, he said, "Well, come with me and I'll lead the way." And off they went. And they walked and walked and walked for miles and into the icy depths of the land of the giants. And they came to a big fortress, a big castle. And Skrymir said, "Well, now I must leave you here, I must go up north." And so they were outside of this big castle, this fortress, and there's a big gate across the front. And there's iron railings down the sides, and under the gate itself was railings. But they couldn't get it open. But even Thor could squeeze through between the iron railings, and they got into the fortress. And they went into the big hallway there, And they're sitting there on two benches were 10 giants. And at the end of the tables was the king of the giants. And the king said, "What are you doing here?" And Thor said, "Well, we have come to pitch our strength and our cleverness against you, the giants." And the king said, "Well, what do you propose?" Well, Loki spoke up and said, "I can eat as much as any of you." And so they set up a trough and they put in meat and potatoes and Yorkshire puddings and peas and gravy. So it's a big long trough full of food. And at one end was Loki and at the other end was one of the giants. And they began to eat right to the center. And Loki had eaten all the contents of the trough. But his opponent had not only eaten all the meat and bread and potatoes and Yorkshire pudding, but he'd also eaten the trough itself. And so he'd won the contest. And then the son of the farmer said, "I can run faster than anybody else here." And so they set up a racetrack. And so there was this lad with one of the giants on the racetrack, ready, steady, go, and off they ran. But the lad had only got about a quarter way down the track when his opponent was waving at the end of the finishing point. Oh, that's no good. And so the king said, "Well, try it again." And so they started again. Ready, steady, go. And off they went. And they ran and ran and ran and ran. And the lad only got about halfway. And his opponent was already at the finishing line. Lost again. "All right," said the king, "right, try again. Ready, steady, go." And off they went. They ran and ran and ran. And the young lad had only got about 3/4 of the way. And his opponent was on his way back. And so that was no good either. So they hadn't won that contest. And so Thor spoke up. He said, "I can drink as much as you can give me. I can drink more than any of you here." And so the king, he sent for the cupbearer who brought a long horn. So the old-fashioned drinking mug, sort of thing. So the big horn, so it was open at one end and and it went down right to a narrow end. And Thor started to drink. Oh, he couldn't even drink it in one go. Couldn't even drink it in two go. No, he couldn't even drink it in three. "That's no good," said the king. No, that's no good. And so the king said, "Well, you try and lift my pussycat." And so the pussycat was led there. And Thor got his hands, his arms onto the pussycat and tried to lift it, but he couldn't lift it except just maybe one leg was lifted off the ground. "That's no good," said the king. No, that's no good. And Thor said, "Well, let me fight one of you. I can fight one of you." "Agreed," said the king. And he sent for his great-great-grandmother. And she came out with a walking stick. "I can't fight that old lady," said Thor. "She's stronger than you think," said the king. And so they started to fight, and they fought until Thor ended up on his back with the old lady's foot on his chest. They had lost. But the king was very impressed with what the company had put up with, how they done well in the contest. And so they gave him food and drink for that night, a big banquet. And they spent the night there. And in the morning, they gave him a good big breakfast. Now the king escorted Thor and Loki and the two children out of the fortress. And the king turned out but to be none other than Skymore they'd met initially. And Giant said, "You did very well, but we were protected by magic. When you threw your hammer at my head, there was a magic mountain that protected me. And if you look over there, you can see the mountain with 3 valleys in it, 3 gashes in it, which is the result of your hammer hitting the mountain. And when Loki was in this eating contest with one of my colleagues, he was nothing but fire, wildfire. So he could not possibly beat, Loki could not possibly beat fire as he ate there. And then the young lad that was running against one of my colleagues was running against the speed of thought. He could never beat that. And when you were drinking out of the horn, you maybe enjoyed the beer that started off, but the end of the horn was deep in the sea, and you were drinking part of the sea. And when you return across the ocean, you'll see that the sea levels drop slightly. And when you were lifting my cat, you were lifting a serpent, Jörmungand, the serpent that's giant and later going to live in the sea. And when you were fighting my great-grandma, you were fighting hell, who is the princess of darkness and of death and lives in the underworld. And so Thor was amazed at this, that how could he possibly overcome the giants when they're protected by magic? And he lifted up his hammer in order to kill the giant. And suddenly the giant disappeared, along with the castle and fortress. There was no more, there's just a plain left. And Thor shouted at the sky, said, "I will be back, and I will defeat you next time."
Thank you very much, Keith. A proper Norse saga. Yeah, beautiful. Loved it. Right, so we're going to go to Kath next, and then we're going to go to Heather. We have a Kibonye. Is that how you pronounce your name? You're the first time I've seen your name here. Can you unmute yourself just for a second? Oh, you should. No, I can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to go to Kath next, and then I'm going to go to Heather. And anybody else wants to come on because they've got to go early, can they just tell me? No, okay. Baba, I see you there. Are you having to go early, my friend? Okay, we go 4 then, if you've got to go early. Okay, so we're going to go Kath, Heather, Baba. Okay. Kath, over to you.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Keith, for that story. This is a story that's very new to me. I just gave it its first airing only this morning. There was a king, and one morning he woke up and his throat was parched. It felt rough. His tongue just felt like a piece of leather. And so he went into the throne room, he called all his courtiers, he called the royal doctor. He told everyone of his problem. Parched throat, leathery tongue. And the doctor looked at him closely. And the doctor said, I think, Your Majesty, you need some lubrication. I will go and get the finest oil. And the doctor scurried back to his room, and he came back within a few minutes with a little bottle of oil that he instructed the king to drink. And the king drank the oil, and he said, "I don't feel any better. I've got a parched throat that just feels icky, and my tongue is all greasy. That hasn't helped at all." The doctor said, greasy feeling. You need something to cut through that. And he sent to the kitchen for a jar of pickled gherkins. And he offered the jar to the king with a golden fork so the king could eat daintily. And the king ate a few of these pickled gherkins, and tears started to stream down his cheeks. And the king said, well, that hasn't helped either. Now I've got an oily, vinegary, leathery tongue and a parched throat that's just burning with all this acid, and my stomach is beginning to feel really, really bad. And he wiped away the tears from his eyes. Do you know what, everyone? I think I'm just thirsty. And the courtiers just glanced at each other because, well, they knew, obviously, if you're thirsty, that doesn't make your eyes water. And there was a little bit of muttering, but of course, you know, who's going to contradict a king? And so some of the courtiers scurried off, and one of them came back with a bowl of rose water. The scent was heavy and cloying, and it was sugary and sweet. And he offered this to the king, and the king drank the rose water. He said, I just feel even more sick now. And somebody came with some thick, sweet wine and offered that to the king, and that didn't make the king feel any better either. Just at this moment, an old woman, whose job it was in the king's castle to do the cleaning, was walking past, sweeping the corridor, and she heard all this going on. And she put her head round the door and she said, give him a drink of water. Everyone turned and looked at her in horror. And the king himself voiced what everyone was thinking. Water? You foolish woman. Do you not understand I am a king? And this ailment that I have, it's very special. It's complicated. It's sophisticated. And what's more, it's regal. How can you expect to cure such a problem with water? Throw her out. And the courtiers hurried to do the king's bidding. The poor old woman was thrown out of the castle and she lost her job. And the king was no better. Thank you.
Lovely, Kath. Absolutely brilliant. Well done. So we're going to go to the Highlands of Scotland now, to Heather.
Brilliant, Kath. That was great. I really like that story. That's never heard that one before. This story is actually for you, Mike. Might bring back some memories. You know, we sometimes mention the storyteller Stanley Robertson, and so this is one that I always think of at this time of year. It's just one of his wee stories that he told a lot. I heard him tell it, I don't know how many times, and I'm sure you have heard him as well. And this story took place a long, long time ago. There was an old traveller couple that lived in a caravan just out on the outskirts of a village. Now, they used to take to the roads and travel around Scotland and do, you know, the usual helping in fields and for farmers and going around the houses. But for quite a number of years, they had just stayed put in this one spot. And they were I don't know, it was probably autumn, it was probably about this time of year. There was, the cousin had come round to have a cup of tea with the old woman. And they were sitting there blethering. And at one point, there we go. Sorry, Maria. Good to see you, though. So the cousin had come round for tea, and it was just the cousin and the old woman, and they were sitting there blethering. And after a while, you know, he asked about her husband, you know, how he was doing, and the old woman started to get quite upset, quite teary-eyed, in fact. He'd never seen her like this before, and she started to cry even. She was that upset. She was just so worried about her husband, because you see, every single night he went into the village, and every single night he went to the pub, and he'd come home late, and he was drinking heavily, and she was really worried about him because she thought he was going to be sent to an early grave at this rate. She had tried to plead with him not to go so often, maybe every other night, but at least not every night. But he just ignored her. Well, the cousin listened to this, and he said, when he comes home, does he come through that crossroads at the edge of the village? And she said, yeah, every night that's the route he takes home. I asked the cousin, well, they say that crossroad is haunted. So I've got an idea. Have you got an old sheet that I could have? So the old woman found an old sheet, and they cut holes in it, and he got it all sorted and folded it up. He said, right, tonight I am going to give him such a fright. I'm going to scare him so badly that he will not only never go back to the pub, but he'll never touch a drop of whiskey again. I promise you that. So with the sheet folded under his arm, he headed off. And sure enough, after the pubs had closed, the old man made his way home, and it was near enough midnight as he approached that crossroads, and the cousin was waiting. There was even an old dead tree right there in the middle of the crossroads, and he was hiding behind it with the sheet over his head, and he was waiting and watching. You could see the old man coming down the road, and he was weaving this way and that. He'd obviously had quite a lot to drink that night. He was, as we say, he was feeling no pain. And as he got near to the crossroads, the old man suddenly stopped. He started patting his pockets, and as the cousin watched it, out came the pipe and a bag of tobacco, and slowly that pipe was filled, and then of course the search for the matches and trying to get the matches lit, and finally the pipe was lit, and he started to take some puffs, and then the old man moved towards that crossroads, and the cousin was waiting, and as soon as he stepped into the crossroads, the cousin jumped out from behind the tree and went, woo, woo, woo. The old man just stopped and looked at him, still smoking his pipe. He said, you know something? I've been coming through these crossroads for nigh on 25 years, and every single time I do, I see the ghost of the crossroads, but this is the first time I've ever seen two of them. And the cousin turned around, and there behind him was a ghost.
There's another little story to do with Stanley Robinson. Was an old traveller storyteller. He came from the Highlands. He came from right in the north, from Inverness, for those of you who haven't heard of him. But we were sat one day, and he was saying that there was an old man and his lady, just like the one in your story, Heather, and when they'd gone off in their caravan, and they just got to the end of the year, just this time of year, and they were just finishing their work, and they was walking down, and the gaffer turned round to the old man, and he said, we'll have to do some laying of the hedges later. The sap is just going down, and you can use some wood, but I see that your wife, she must have been a bit nesh, because she's gone and lit the stove in your caravan. Nesh, for those of you who don't know, is an old-fashioned word that we use. It means thin blood. It means you feel the cold. And he took one look and he legged it. Have you seen an old man run as fast as you can? He was running and he was stalking, and his arms were going up like this and everything else. And he was yelling and he was bawling, and he was going down, and he ran straight into his caravan, and he put the fire out straight away, because where he hid his money was in the chimney of the fire, and that's where he put all the pound notes and coins, and he stuffed it up there. And as she lit the fire was setting fire to all his money. And they tell a story in Scotland about an old man who can run, but it is the funniest run you've ever seen, because his elbows are going up and down, and he's shouting and he's bawling his head off, and he's only running as fast as he can. And nowadays he's about as old as I am, and that's how I look. And Stanley told me that one afternoon. I was a bit younger, But I absolutely feel a lot more for that old man running through the field nowadays than I used to. So I'm going to go to John Rowe next, who's going to do some poems. And then David, I see you're back again. So will you go after John, please? And we'll have a story from, well, we'll have a story that's told from Texas. Whether it comes from Texas or not, I don't know. So it's up to you. Anyway, John, you're going to do some poems. You're muted, John.
I know. I'm not the only poet on tonight. Keobonya in Botswana is a poet, I think. So maybe we'll hear from her later. I hope. But this one's for David. David Thompson. It's one I wrote in Austin. I'm going to do a few road poems today. And it's Austin 2013. 4 days, 52 weeks, and an indefinite number of decades define the flood of poetry in this city. On my first visit 18 years ago, they were sculpting concrete pillars on the north side. Now, these columns support a highway in the sky, making sure commuters never see the two policemen harassing the one pedestrian in the deserted side street somewhere south of my hotel. Then, listeners to BBC Two radio on the far side of the ocean had never heard of 6th Street. Now the good stuff has been pushed away from the center, and the sane travel by bicycle. But this is America, so it's only fitting that Emerson's children should follow the ripples as they spread from where some forgotten poet, musician, or passing monk dropped a pebble a long, long time ago. And I'm going to do a couple of short ones from North Africa, if I might. This is my first visit to Algiers. And so this coast could have graced any of 100 Hollywood films. Its sea dotted with freighters and a shoreline, one North African urban sprawl, rising terrace after terrace towards the sky, modern in the extreme, even the old stuff. It challenges Europeans who think straight lines, right angles, and abstractions came with the Cubists and Mondrian. The stray dog, loping with its ribs jutting across the wasteland, would have given some comfort, but it's the monument to the martyrs that dominates the skyline and reminds me it is here my American literature professor stood on a runway 43 years ago to meet Eldridge Cleaver, who lived in this city in self-imposed exile, how Fanon helped change the thinking of a generation, and as if to confirm my thoughts now, in the second decade of the 21st century, the book fair is packed with tens and thousands of visitors and volumes stacked head high, while I am left humbled by the intensity of my audience as they listen to me jabber on in an alien tongue they are determined to conquer. As I leave, an official at the airport asks if I have anything to declare. When I answer nothing, he replies, "Nothing but your good health. Please come and visit us again." I correct myself and declare my good health and wonder where north of the Mediterranean I could have had such a conversation. I'm going to finish on Morocco, move next door to Morocco, because this is for Ali. And this is just sketches from Morocco. As we follow Aziz the Magnificent striding through the Medina, heads turn, hands are thrust into his and arms are thrown around the shoulders of the Sahari king of all he surveys. Now that is what I call presence. Me, I'm Ali Baba, sniffing out beads, leather, and smiles with two of my 40 thieves in this city where Africa and Europe collide. I'm at home in any place that names me, and now I'm owned in part by the traders in this Medina. On Sunday, I tell stories in the children's club. Tomorrow, we go to the coast and the town where my 20th year drew towards its close in a cacophony of lorry lights, music, and unleavened bread. Stepping into the square with the sea to our backs and the sun on our faces, I feel the weight of an imagined world evaporate, like the musicians and acrobats who momentarily remind us that everything changes only in appearance. The carpets are laid before us. in this Aladdin's cave of colour and knowledge, while round the corner plastic tubs full of silver and amber wait, and couscous is being prepared for the feast.
Oh. Lovely, John. Thank you very much, mate. It's always a pleasure. So we're going to go to David, then we're going to go to Diana, then we're going to go to Shane, and then we're going to go to Keep On You, if Keep On You would care to do some poems for us.
Sure she would.
I'd love to hear some, absolutely. So we go to David next, then Diana, then Shane, then Keep On You. Okay, so David.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Well, I was wondering, you said a Texas tale, and I have two I was thinking of. One of them is a legend based on a true person, and the other one is an East Texas African-American ghost story. But that's the longer one. I don't know if I have a time limit or not, but I will go with the legend instead. So I'm going to tell you today the story of Bigfoot Wallace and the Hickory Nuts. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I am talking in dialect and accent. Can you tell? I know you can. I see your faces up there. You know I am. Well, anyway, you got to know about Bigfoot. Bigfoot Wallace, I don't know his real name, but they called him Bigfoot. He must have had a big, Bigfoot or something. He was a hero of the Alamo, that sacred shrine of Texas independence. Lord, praise. Can I get an amen on that? Thank you very much. And anyway, so he decided that after the Alamo and the independence and all that good stuff, he went and he got himself a ranch. Now, that ranch was in West Texas. Honey, let me tell you, it takes 12 hours to go from one border to the other in Texas. How he got there on a horse and wagon, I don't know how long it took, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So anyhow, he decided he was going to raise some horses. Now, you got to realize that horses is like a money, or it's like status or whatever you want to call it. And he had some of the prettiest horses you've ever seen. He had Appaloosas. He had Palominis. I think that's how you pronounce it. He had an Arabian. Oh, Arabian. Oh, honey, that was his baby. And he had the Arabian somewhere else, not in the main corral. Now, it's very interesting and very important. You realize about horses and corrals. You also have to understand the Comanches. Now, this particular band of Comanches that lived around in that area had been harassing some of the people who lived there, but not bad. They just want to steal horses because that's part of a person's, a young man's rite of passage. How many horses can you steal? Well, anyway, as I was saying, Bigfoot Wallace had 40 of the most beautiful horses you've ever seen in your life. Lord Jesus, Mary and the barnyard animals. It was wonderful, just wonderful. That evening, though, after Bigfoot had fed the horses and gone to see his baby girl, his Arabian, and he was getting ready, everything got real quiet, real quiet. And Lord, you couldn't have heard nothing until there was a ruckus coming from the corral. There was a whooping and a hollering, and you could hear the horses boogity, 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 wahoo, boogity, 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 boogity. Ah, Lord. Bigfoot woke up. Because of the noise. He looked out the window, and his horses was gone. He turned to his wife, said, honey, they done it. They done took my horses. I got to go get them. And she says, you better be careful, because if you don't come back alive, don't come running to me. So anyhow, he got himself ready. He had some long sleeves and some long pants and some boots and a high collar shirt, because it does get kind of cold at night out there. It's the desert, by the way. So he gets on his horse and he takes off where he thinks he's going. And he's able to follow him because that moon is all full and it was shining. And he could see the horse prints of all the horses done stolen going. And he looked in the very, very distance and he could see some smoke rising. He could see smoke rising. Says, that must be where they is. I got to go get my horses back. So he rides up and he gets off and he leads his baby girl, his Arabian, and he ties her, and they're in a group of hickory nut trees. Now, what's he going to do? Because there's 10 of them and one of him and 20 horses plus their horses and my horse. So what do you think he did? He took some string and he tied it around the cuff of each sleeve. He took some string and he tied it around the ankles of his pants. And he pulled that coat, that collar way up here, and he made certain. But what he did do, which I'm not going to tell you, he stuffed himself silly with hickory nuts. I mean, all over the place. He was a big old fat man. He looked like some sort of a Michelin tire guy. I have no idea. He was just all over the place. And he starts walking towards that camp. Now he sees that they had killed one of the horses to have something to eat. And there was the hide over there, and they was roasting and bragging and talking like they always do. You know how young men are. Anyway, so he gets up there and he goes, "Oh, my horses!" You could have done heard a pin drop next week. They looked up and they saw this person or this whatever come to go this way and coming that way to come get their horses. Well, they pulled out their bows and their arrows and their hammers and their hatchets, and they pew, 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 dum, 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 and he still keep on coming. "I want my horses." He keep on coming. And you know what? They probably thought he was some sort of a desert devil coming after them. Whoa, they ran. They left everything. They left the horses. They left their food cooking. They just left everything. Oh, so Bigfoot went over and his horses recognized the scent. You know, horses recognize scent. And he untied the cuffs of his shirt. And he untied the cuffs of his pants. And all of them, their hickory nuts done poured out. And guess what? They was all shelled and cut in half. So what did he think? He got his horse, that skin of the horse they had killed to eat. And he put all of those hickory nuts and everything, and he tied it up because it makes good feed for the hogs. He got his horses. He got on his girl, his Babel girl, his Arabian, and he took his horses home. And that is why we always talk about Bigfoot Wallace. And I tell you, as far as I know, it's a true story.
Oh, wow. What a lovely story. And thank you very much. That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Right. So we're going to go to Diana now, and then after that, we're going to Shane. Okay. Now, Susan from South Africa, are you going to do something tonight? No. Okay. That's I saw the icon. It's okay. It's okay. Diana, over to you, my friend.
Hi. Right. I mean, COVID has been hard on all of us. And well, this is a story about someone that feels he's been particularly had a hard time to deal with. And he lives in the jungle. And it's been just as hard there during COVID as it has been anywhere else in the world. Because after all, it's a pandemic. So people have been lonely and animals have been lonely, and they couldn't meet up as normal, and they couldn't get up to all the things they normally did. But now restrictions are coming in, and it looks like maybe there's a rosier future ahead. It's not completely okay. You still have to take care. But this character, well, he had really missed something because he was such a socializer. He loved other people. He loved other animals. And what he loved to do more than anything in the whole wide world was to party. I'm going to a party. I'm going to a party. Ra, 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 ra. And he loved parties, but there weren't any parties in the pandemic. But now where he was in the jungle, he was hiding in the bushes. And his name was Anansi the spider. And he was watching and he could see rabbit, and he could see turtle and lion and eagle, but he couldn't quite hear properly. There were lots of noises going on, like the wind was going whoosh, and the goat was chomping away at the leaves. And there was also a frog croaking away. So he couldn't hear, but he thought by looking at some of the mouths that the word party was said. Party! Oh, this was music to Anansi's ears, even though he couldn't hear it properly. He was sure that was what they were saying. And he was excited. But how was he going to find out where the parties were, when they were, and whose party it was? Because, you know, the thing about Anansi is he's not always popular. I mean, he's always into one-upmanship, and he's a bit cheeky, and he's a bit lazy, and he's always getting one over on somebody. So as you can imagine, he's not on the top of the list for the parties. He's not even on the list at all. So, but he must find out because he loves parties. And do you know what? He's been shopping online, and online there was a sale. And well, who else would want a pair of sparkly sequin trousers with 8 legs in them? But Anansi, and he got them at a really cut price, and he's really excited about this. And he's got a jacket with silver sequins as well and gold lapels. And he's even got 4 pairs of shoes, 4 for his left feet and 4 for his right feet. And he knows how to get the best noise out of them. So they sound like tap dancing shoes. And he's so excited because he's had to keep all these in his wardrobe, including his sparkly bow tie, for such a long time. And there's not been an opportunity to wear them. But now he thought he heard somebody mention party. So he would do some digging. Now, Anansi is not very good at remembering certain things, like, for example, how many children he has. That's probably because he's got so many. But he knows that it rhymes with 8, so, or it goes with 8. So it could be 8, it could be 16, it could be 24 or 32. But he doesn't really need to worry because Aso, his wife, she knows about every child. She knows all their different personalities and all the mischief they get up to. So he doesn't really need to worry. But he decides to ask 4 of them. And he asks the eldest son, one of the middle sons, I'm not sure which, but there were just too many in the middle to tell you which one it was, and the youngest son, and the eldest daughter. And he says to them, I need to find out about these parties. I'm sure there is one. Can you see whatever you can find out? If you go this way, and you go that way, and you go right over the back, and you just stay round about here. And you can all find out. So that's what they did. And they went off. Well, the eldest son, he met Rabbit. And he could have sworn he saw some decorations away at the back, behind where Rabbit stayed. Does that mean that Rabbit was going to have a party? Maybe even that day? Oh, he would have to rush back and tell his dad. So he did. He rushed back and he said, Rabbit's going to have a party, but I just couldn't find out when. But I know where. So we're all set. It's round by the back of where Rabbit stays. So Anansi thanked his eldest son and off he went. And he said, come back tomorrow and I'll have a job for you. So the next one, the middle son, came back and he said, I find out that Lion is going to have a party. And it's up there on the hillside by the cave. And oh, it's going to be a real extravaganza. You don't want to miss this one, Dad. It's really going to be cool. So he thought, yes, he knew where it was. He knew who it was. But unfortunately, he hadn't been able to get that information about when. So the third one, the youngest son, he went off. And he found, well, He couldn't find very much to begin with, but he kept going. And instead of looking down, he had to look up, because there up in one of the tall trees, in a wonderful, extravagant treehouse, was Eagle. And Eagle was going to have a party. He could tell there were bells all around the outside of the treehouse, and there were ribbons down. And it was wonderful. Yeah. But he didn't know when the party was going to be. Well, he went back to his dad and he said, Dad, Eagle's going to have a party and it's wonderful. There's bells on his tree house and there's ribbons coming down. But oh dear me, I don't know when it's going to be. What are we going to do about that? Well, Dad said, don't worry, son, you tried your best. Come back and I'll see you tomorrow, as he had said to the other two children. So then it was just the eldest daughter that had to come back. Well, eventually she came back and she said, Hippo is going to have a party, Dad. You know Hippo? I saw him down in the mud. Oh, he was wallowing about and he says he's going to invite all his friends. But, you know, I didn't hear him mentioning your name, but maybe that was just a mistake, that he, in all the excitement about his party, he just forgot to mention that you'd be invited. So he knew where Hippo was going to have his party, down by the river, down by the mud. But still, he didn't know when that was going to be. And he was quite worried now. And he was so worried that he wasn't going to get to wear his new outfit with the sequin sparkly legs and the boots and the jacket and the sparkly gold bow tie. Well, what he thought to himself, I will be prepared. I will get ready. And you just never know. There's bound to be at least one of these parties happening tonight. So what he said to his children was, I'm going to take one of my silken threads, my web. I'm going to be in the middle of this web, and I'm going to give you each a silk thread attached to the middle of me. It's going to be tied round my waist, and you will have the other end. And when you feel, or when you find out there's going to be a party, then you tug and I will go in that direction. And he was so proud of himself. And he thought, and Nancy, that is such a fantastic idea. How could you have thought of that? That's just brilliant. Well, the first one went round his middle and he gave the silken thread to his eldest son. And then he gave out the rest. There was another silken thread for the middle son. And yet another one for the youngest son, and another still for the eldest daughter. Well, he had to be very patient, and he was wriggling about anyway because he was excited, but he had to wait. And then it came. There was a tug and another tug, and he started, and it was pulling tight around his middle, but he was being pulled forward, and oh, he couldn't remember what the best thing was to do. He was losing his balance and it was pulling him tighter and he was running out of breath and he had to cut it. He cut it with his teeth. Well, you can't go to a party if you don't have any breath left in you. So that seemed like the sensible thing to do. That he would just have to forgo that one. But he still had 3 more. Excitement. Well, you have to wait a bit longer and wait a bit longer, but eventually there was another tug and another tug, and then from a different direction, another one. So there were 2 tugs at the same time, and again it was going tight round his middle, and he was having trouble breathing, and he didn't know what to do for the best, and he tried to go one way, and he tried to go the other way. And he couldn't quite manage to work out what was going to be best. So he went to his teeth and he cut it. And that meant that he only had one left. But if he got to a party that night, then he could strut about and do his dancing, and everybody would see how cool he was, and everybody would see how magic he was at dancing, and there'd be all this lovely food and the music, and it would all be worthwhile. But he had to wait quite a wee while before he felt that tug. And he felt the tug.
Yeah.
And he felt it again and again, and it pulled and it pulled and it pulled and it pulled so tight. And it pulled over. And then he was here panting for breath. And it snapped. And he got his breath back. And that was the story of how Anansi the spider missed not one, not two, not three, but 4 parties all in one night. Thank you.
Right, great, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Right, you see, yes, keep on, yeah. I see you've muted yourself. That's fine. So we're going to go to Shane next, and then we'll go to Kibonya. If you want to do some poems, you'd be very welcome to after the next story. Can you wave to me? Right, okay. Shane, we go to you next. If you can unmute yourself. Can I just remind everybody that we tried to stay muted. I know most of you are, why the stories have been, poets, spoken word, whatever it is, have been told. Thank you very much, Shane.
Thanks. I've got a new story as well, actually, that I want to air, I guess, for want of a better word. It's a Halloween story. And what can I tell you about it? It's I'm just looking at a name on here, Chief Leluska, who spent many years with the Quacker, I believe you say it, tribe on the northwest coast of the North America, Canada. He spent many years with them. Apparently he was he carved in wood, lots of their totem poles, paintings, and he was also a prolific storyteller. And he was given permission to tell the stories, the native stories, and to create the art, etc. And he compiled a book of stories, and one of them is effectively a Halloween story, or certainly can fit a Halloween description. So I want to start with that, if I can, please. So there was just a, oh hello, I can hear somebody. Is that you, Mike? Oh no, it's David.
Yeah, go on, David. He's okay. He's all right.
Okay. So shall I carry on?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah. Okay. So hello, David. So there was just a very small tribe of just a few families that lived very close to the sea on the west coast. There were cedars and lodgepole and what have we, trees all around them, and they had enough of everything. There was lots of fish and lush grounds and trees and for their lodges and what have we. And there was an old story of that they used to tell the children to not go into the woods, for there was, well, they didn't know if it was a creature or a spirit, but there was something deep in the woods that shouldn't be disturbed. And this has been passed down over generation and generation and generation. Well, some of the children heard this story, and being children, when you're told not to do something, the first thing you want to do normally is you want to go and do it. And some of these children thought, well, let's go and have a look, see what this is. So a bunch of them crept into the woods one day, and they went deeper and deeper and deeper and further in the woods than they'd been before. And they got to a place where there was a fallen tree, and they hid behind the fallen tree. And in the distance, they could see, well, it looked like a beaver lodge, but there was no water. It was on land, and it was bigger. But it was a very messy kind of home of some description. And they just hid behind this log, just kind of looking at it. And they were sure they could hear something in the house. And one of them called out, but there was no response. And after a while, they got hungry and they took themselves back home. And that evening, as they did most evenings, they ate outside. And there, all the families, all the tribe, the whole tribe itself, it was a small tribe, as I say, they were all out there eating their evening meal around the fire, the darkness of the night. And then they heard a rustling, and something in the shadows was on the edge of their camp. They sensed it, and they could see this shape, this shadow, as wide almost as it was tall. And then a voice said, "Don't disturb me. All I want is peace. Leave me alone." And then it was gone. And as it went into the woods, they could hear a few owls calling out to each other. And the parents spoke to the children and said, as we thought, stay away. You've been warned, stay away. Well, a few weeks went past and the children stayed away. They were good children, but children being children, they get inquisitive. They want to know what it is. And a bunch of them, once again, go out into the wood, and they find their way back to that place where that log is on the ground, and they hide and they look, and they're just watching this hide, and they're sure there's something in there, and they can hear something. And then one of them picks up a stick and he throws it at the lodge, and another one picks up a stone and throws it at the lodge, and then they run away laughing, and they run back to camp. And just before they get back into camp, they just walked in a normal way, so the parents didn't suspect anything. And that evening, a meal was put out once again, and they all sat around the fire, enjoying their meal. And then they sensed it again, the presence of this creature, this being, this something was just standing there in the shadow. "I have told you to leave me alone. If you keep interfering with me, there will be consequences. Leave me alone." And it was gone. And once again, they could hear owls calling out to each other. Well, the parents reprimanded the children and said, "You must not go there. There will be consequences. Stay away, stay away." Well, it was months the children stayed away. There was a couple of boys wanting to prove themselves, and they took themselves out there. Once again, they snuck underneath that log, and they watched that scruffy hide of branches and twigs and leaves and what have we, and they were sure something was going on there, and they dared each other to go up and take something from the hide. So they both stalked up to the hide, and they grabbed a branch and they pulled it off the hide, ran off laughing and laughing and laughing, and they left those branches in the woods somewhere, and they went back. And again, the family had their evening meal around the fire, and they sensed the presence, and then it stepped forward. This creature was as wide, almost as tall, with a cloak of feathers and a hooked beak or nose, what was it, and feet that looked like claws, and it roared at them. "I have told you to stay away and leave me alone. This is your final warning. There will be consequences if you interfere with me. I just want to be left alone and in peace. Leave me in peace." And the creature disappeared, and the owls called out to each other louder than before, and it was gone. Well, it was a long time before anyone dared go out there. And the stories in this tradition, things happen 4 times, not 3 times, 4 times. There was a 4th time. Those 2 boys wanted to prove their manliness, and they took all the children of that small tribe with them. All the children from each of those little families, they took all the children. They persuaded them to come with them, and they snuck out into the wood deeper and deeper and deeper until they came to that log. And they all laid and looked above and looked. And they threw stones and sticks and sticks and stones, and they called out and they roared and they laughed and they all began to run away. But as they did, the door flew open, and out came the owl witch herself. "Stop," she said, and all the children just froze on the spot. And she said some words, some sort of incantation, and suddenly all the children just began to shrink and shrink and shrink. That is, apart from their ears, which grew quite big. And then they grew tails, and they turned into mice. And suddenly all the owls from the wood swooped down and devoured all of the mice, all of the children. Not a single child returned home. After days of searching and looking, the parents realized what had happened. They left that place, childless, and they joined other tribes. And that encampment eventually fell into nature. And now there are just fallen trees and moss and nature. And that's all that remains. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, certainly one I hadn't heard before, Shane. And
Yeah,
but the other thing I would like to say before we go to Kimbonya is I welcome people telling a story for the first time. So you've got to do it somewhere, and this sort of environment and the storytelling clubs we do and everything else. So you've got to, it's what good storytellers do, is go and tell a new story.
Yeah.
So well done, Shane, for telling it the first time. It's always a difficult thing to do. We've all done it in our life.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Always, absolutely, and it went well for you.
Thank you. Echoes of the Elders, the book is called Echoes of the Elders, Chief Leluska.
Oh, okay, that sounds really
interesting. It's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Right, now we're going to try Kimbonya, I think is the right how to say your name, who comes from Botswana. I am reliably informed. Now, my knowledge of Africa is not that hot, to be fair. Okay, so Botswana is an African country. I've got that far, but I don't know much more about it than that, to be fair to me. Okay, anyway, so you have to unmute yourself now, Kimbonya, and everybody else will mute themselves. And I believe you're a poet, so you're going to do a couple of poems, yeah? Right, so you have to unmute yourself because we can't hear you. Right, well, I'll say it again. You have to stop. We can't hear you. You are muted.
I'll message her.
Messenger. Yeah, I think you're on a phone. I think you're on your mobile phone. And we are muted. You are muted, so we cannot hear what you're saying. Right, John, if you mute yourself again. Right. I've had a message from Mike to say that he doesn't want to do anything, and Baba is having connection problems. So that leaves me, David. Ah, yes, you're here.
Do you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You are right. Thank you. I'm Giabonya Barem from Botswana. So I'm going to recite my poem about an African woman.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm start. In between the ocean and the tide, there is an African woman, strong and tough, from the golden sun to the silver moon. Her smiles never frowns. In between the tsunami and the fire, there is an African woman, never wears to tear. From now till then, her eyes never speak tears. Woman of Africa, beautiful rose, so elegant like the pumpkin. In between the devil and the still waters of Chobe River, there is an African woman Who dares the devil? An Amazon always ready within a shoot. Oh, my African woman, have you not blessed the African kings, Shaka Zulu, Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Kofi Annan, Sesreza Khama, the former president of Botswana? In the veins reign the toughness of your breast milk like the morning palm worms. Oh, my African woman, she's like a king. Thank you. I'm finished.
Right. That was lovely, and thank you very much for being here. I do this every Sunday at this time, once a fortnight. So I won't be here next Sunday, but in 2 weeks in time in Sunday, I will be here again. Come back and do another poem for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Well done. Well done.
Well done. Is Kibonya your first name or your second name?
It's the first time to participate here in Worldwide Story Round.
Great. You're very welcome to come back. Okay, thank you very much.
Mike,
Thank you.
Mike, can I just say something?
Carry on.
I invited Kibonya to come this evening. Thank you so much for coming. I just wondered, Kibonya, have you got a second poem? Because that was quite short.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I didn't. I only write one poem. But
Okay.
I'll do the next time. The other one next time.
Fantastic.
In
Thank
2
you.
weeks' time, you come back. You promise me.
Yeah, I promise you.
You promise that. That is a Kibonya promise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Right. So I have in front of me David and Maria. Either of you, if you want to do something, you're very welcome to do it. Everybody else who wants to do something has done something. Maria's putting a thumb up. So yeah. You want to unmute yourself? You're still muted. You're still muted.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Very good. I just wanted to say hello, Campania. That was mighty. I loved it, and we're in the time of the veil thinning. So I thought I would ask the group here. There are 3 creatures that walk the earth that don't belong here. Do you know what they are? 3 categories.
Yeah, Donald Trump's one of them.
No, unfortunately, we have to tame him.
I would imagine one of them is a banshee.
Banshees is part of the category, and that category is the things of the hedges. So that includes the she-folk, the fairies, the leprechauns, the banshees, and the ghosts of the trees. So that's one. Yeah.
Of the water.
Underneath the water, yeah.
Yeah.
The water.
Yes, they'd be considered the nature things. So the water nymphs, etc., would be in there as well. And then there's another group which is the ghosts of people, and those are the people that walk the earth and don't know they're dead. And the third group were the angels that were hurled out of heaven in the Great War back in the day, And these people, because they're so beautiful that you can't take your eyes off them. They're absolutely gorgeous. And they're also known to be very vain. So how would you know that you're in the presence of something that does not belong to this world?
They have no shadow.
I'm not sure about that, but in the Irish tradition, it's the feet. If both feet are even that much off the ground, both at the same time, you know that you're in the presence of something that shouldn't be walking the earth, and you should run like hell. So that's the, kind of, those are the questions that start the scary story sessions that are coming up now. You know, I think John Rowe, we have to have a scary story session for October. Yeah,
we do, Maria. We definitely do. But there is something over here in England. There's a lovely story about the man who watched his shadow die, and so he walks the land without a shadow.
Mike, you have to bring that story. I think we're going to have a scary story night, and Mike has to bring that story. So that's my contribution for tonight. I could tell you a scary story now, but it would take too long. So thanks for asking me to come in. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, Maria, come in 2 weeks' time. Okay, and I think it might have been John Campbell who told it me in the first place.
Yes, I'd be there for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
I was ready for a story then, Maria.
What we could do, we have a choice of either the worldwide story round on the 24th, which may be better because there'll be a lot of storytellers will be elsewhere on the 31st, or we could actually do it on the 31st. So I think probably 24th for scary story night.
Yeah.
Is that mine? Is that a fortnight's time?
That's a fortnight's time. That's
no, I'll do it. I'll do a scary story.
Are you happy to do that, Mike?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, no, absolutely. I love it. Yeah, I love doing the scary stories. Maria, you've got to come along with one as well.
Then I can steal all your stories for the gig I'm being paid for on the 30th.
And I think we have to have one from Cabana, you know. So definitely. I love the scary stories from Africa. They're beautiful.
Cabana has already promised to come over, and some of the scariest stories you'll ever hear, Maria, come from the Highlands of Scotland.
Yeah,
there's some of the really
and from the bogs of Cork, man. I challenge you now for the scariest story.
Right. Okay, well, this is going to be fun. A fortnight's time, we'll call it that then, John. Okay. Right, so I think we're coming to a natural end tonight, unless, David, you particularly want to do something? Or are you going to come in a fortnight's time and do a really scary?
Well, I just sent a message. The 24th, I won't be able to come. I'm an elections official, and we're having early voting, and it has Sundays and blah, 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 blah. So, but I do have a great East Texas African-American tale. I don't know how much time we have. It's about 10 to 12 minutes.
Right, I think so. What does everybody else think? If you don't want to, we'll fade away. I know you've done one already, David. I am very happy for you to do. That would be the last one for tonight. So I want to bring us on into the Halloween night. It's, as I've sat here, the night is coming. It's quite a warm night over here. So yes, David, please.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
The story I'm going to tell you is East Texas African-American ghost story. Comes out of the sharecropper communities. Now, if you don't know what a sharecropper is, think of modern version feudalism. And also, there's a thing that you need to understand. There's a difference between a ghost dog and a dog ghost. A ghost dog is the ghost of a dog. A dog ghost is a ghost that takes the shape of a dog. So there's a familiarity there, and you're not all that afraid. This is Hannah and the dog ghost, and it's told in dialect too, and I'll try not to go too fast. It was a hot, nasty July day. Lord, it was one of them days where the sky was blue-white. 'Tweren't no clouds, weren't no wind, and the sweat just sits there right on your upper lip. Oh, the people was out in the gardens and they was working. They have to understand that the fiddler man had been talked about being around. Now, the fiddler man, he comes and steals your chillin', and you don't see him again. So they had to be real careful. Now, Miss Hannah You know, Miss Hannah, that beautiful African-American woman, her husband was killed in that horrible Sawville accident. You read about it about a paper about 2 weeks ago. Oh, it was terrible. But anyway, Miss Hannah had a baby boy. His name is James Jr. Now, Miss Hannah had this situation where she had to work in the community garden. But who was going to take care of her baby boy, James? Named after her husband. Well, it turns out there's Miss Linda, the white lady that lives across the street from her, said, I'll watch him. Don't worry. You go and work and I'll make certain he's all right. And that's what happened. So Miss Hannah was out in that field. She was just chopping some vegetables and she was just working and the sweat was just pouring. And all of a sudden, Miss Linda, she done come running down the road. Miss Hannah, Miss Hannah, Miss Hannah, Miss Hannah, Miss Hannah. What is it? What? I had gone inside to get your baby something to drink. And when I came out, he was gone. What? I said he was gone. And they said that the fiddler man had been around. And oh, I don't know what to do with Miss Hannah. Oh, she let out a wail that could be heard from here to next week. She beat her chest. She fell on the ground and just sobbing, my baby, my baby, my baby. Miss Linda had to slap her, get her attention. She said, you come with me now. We're going to go see Dr. John. Now, Dr. John's the root doctor, and he knows what to do. So they go down to see Dr. John, and they tell him what's going on. And Dr. John, he said, all right. Why don't you get a piece of white cloth from a dress that ain't never going to be worn? You go down and you find some High John the Conqueror root for the power of God. You go find some mimosa blossoms for the tears of angels. You go down to your husband's grave and you get some of that dust and you put it in because you're going to need to have his strength. And you tie that all up and you put it in a satchel and you put some food. You take your Bible, you take yourself, and you just walk. You walk west. You'll know when you get there. You'll know when you get there. You'll know when you get there. So that's what she did. Miss Linda wasn't going to get married, even though she had a white wedding dress. So they cut a piece of cloth and she went and got some High John the Conqueror root for the power of God. She got some mimosa blossoms for the tears of the angels. And she went down to her husband's grave and she's got some of that dirt and dust off. She tied it up in a bundle. And she said to her husband's grave, she said, James, honey, I'm going to need your help. I'm going to need your strength. James, honey, the fiddler man that got our baby. I got to go get it back. So Miss Hannah got a satchel and she put in her Bible. She put in that cloth bag. She put in some food. She put in some water. She closed the door to her house and she started walking. And she walked and she walked. And she walked, and then she heard patter, 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 patter. And she would stop, and it would stop. She'd walk, and it'd walk. She'd stop, and it'd stop. And she turned around behind her, not knowing what she's going to see. She saw a big old yaller dog looking at her. But you know what? There was something about those eyes that were so familiar. So she would walk and it would walk. She would stop and it would stop. She would sit and it would sit. She had something to eat. She gave the dog something to eat. She had something to drink. She gave the dog something to drink. And when she took a nap, that dog just sat there guarding her. Well, let me tell you, they walked and they came to that place. That very, very place where you step over, if you know what I mean. Well, she did, but the dog stayed. He wouldn't come. Dog wouldn't come. So she said, oh, she has to do it herself. And she keeps walking. It's real quiet and kind of gray. And everything was sort of dead smelling. They came upon this ramshacklified house, 2 stories, gray clapboard, windows sort of broken. Some of the shutters are falling off. Old dead trees around it. She stopped and she looked. Hello? I say hello to the house. Anybody to home? No sound. She walked up to those steps. I say hello. I knock, hello. No sound. She reached for that screen door. And she stepped inside. And it was quiet. It was quiet. No breeze anywhere. No window open.
Yeah, dude. What is these people?
And she waited.
Ah.
She waited. She looked around. And there was a staircase. And she heard it. Mama, Mama, come get me. Mama, please. Mama, take me home. Mama, Mama, Mama. That was her baby. That was James. It was here. She's got to get him. Where was he? It was coming from upstairs. She gets up there. There's a long hallway with 8 doors. She tries each one. Locked. She comes to the last one. Miss Hannah. Mama, please come get me. Mama, please take me home. I don't know where I am. Mama. She stepped into that room and there was a dirty old window with a piece of curtain and there was an iron bed with a dusty old quilt. And she looked around and there behind her was a dresser with a mirror. And that mirror was broke, part of it. And she looked inside and there he was. There was her baby James. Oh God, how am I going to get it? Mama, come take me home. Mama. So she remembered. She reached into her satchel and she got that white bag and she reached in and she got her Bible and she turned to the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not work. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. And she threw it. Mirror smashed. She reached in and she took her baby out and she held him. Oh, my baby, Mama, I want to go home. My baby. He's mine. A voice came. He's mine. You can't have him. Hurry. Up the stairs. How's she gonna get out of there? What's she gonna do? He's mine. You can't have him. And she looked around. She slammed that door. And she looked around and she saw that window and she saw the quilt and she said, honey, hold on. And she wrapped herself up in that quilt and threw herself to that window. And landed on the ground outside. He's mine. I'm telling you to get him. You gotta have him. He's mine. She unwrapped that quilt. She stood up. She said, honey, hold on. We gotta go. Yes, Mama. And off she took. She done run. And yeah, he's mine. I'm coming after him. I'm coming to get him. And all of a sudden, And she turned around and there was that dog, and that dog looked at her, and those eyes said, "You woman, you better get out of here." And she took on off, and he turned.
Good. Emile Zoo.
And then I tell you, on those full moon nights, when Miss Hannah is sitting with her
James,
James, rocking back and forth, she thinks about what happened. She thinks about that dog. And she remembers that dog had really familiar eyes. Oh, and as for the fiddler man, he ain't been seen around them parts no more.
Well, that's a nice start. We can get that started. Yeah, that's what we're going to do in a fortnight's time. That's beautiful. Kibonya, if you can hear me, we're going to have to ask you to mute yourself when the other people are telling stories. Okay. Right. So over to you, John. I think we finished for tonight. We've had a
Well, it's been
night.
a wonderful night. Thank you, Mike, as always. Thank you, everyone that told. You have been absolutely amazing tonight. And we just have to say what's coming up, which is on Tuesday at 5 o'clock UK time. We have our young international tellers, 18 years and younger. Then on Friday, we've got at 6 o'clock UK time, Shelley Verma, who's an Indian teller who lives in Switzerland, fantastic teller. She's doing our children stories. And then on, I think, where are we? What state is it? Oh, and then we've on Sunday, of course, we've got on the Sunday the 17th, we've got Rock the Casbah. So our fundraiser for the festival. If anyone wants to put anything in the donations anyway, that all just goes to the festival. Just go and click on the hat for tonight, and that will just, everything goes to the festival at the moment. So, but for now, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone told, and good. And thank you, Ali, for driving the red carpet.
On Thursday, we have our Get a Word Online.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. So we're doing a Get a Word Online concert. It's the first time this autumn. So we've got loads of famous storytellers and things there. It's only a $5 to come and listen. Come and have a look into it if you can. And on a Thursday, Sunday in 2 weeks' time, on the 24th, I believe it is, the spookiest of all spooky stories.
Yes,
we're
combining all
company of John Rowe. Okay, we have a competition between Cork and the Highlands of Scotland and the hills and the Alps of Shropshire. We'll see, and anybody else who cares to come and join in. But I'm not going to call it. I'm expecting it to be a long one. So we'll start at 6 o'clock as always. I can see it going on after 8 o'clock. So settle down for stories of the banshees that only walk that far above the ground and people with no shadows. That will start.
Right.
Brilliant.
Okay. And Mike, you've been very quiet tonight. I've seen you there all night, my friend. And it's lovely to be in your company again. Really is. And so are you, Susan. Okay.
Fantastic.
We'll let Julio go.
Okay. It's Ali tonight, I think.
It's Ali, is it? Okay, Ali. Can you hear me, Ali?
Yes, Mr. Mike, can I hear you?
Yeah, thank you very much for your help again. I'm looking forward to being in your company.
You are welcome, my friend. Thank you.
Okay. See you next time, my friend.
But see you soon in our storytelling cafe.
Yeah.
So I missed that.
He's going to see you soon in the World Storytelling Cafe, mate. And next year it's actually in the cafe.
So in Africa, in Morocco, John, does Halloween happen in the same way in that culture as it does?
But there might be something. I will check that out.
Yeah. Yeah, because I really don't. It's the first time in February when I go over to Africa to meet you all face to face. It's the first time I've been to Africa. So, yeah. I've been to the west coast of Ireland lots of times.
Well, that's sort of on the way.
Yeah.
You'll have to come to the south coast of Ireland, Mike. Come to Kerry Writers Museum or Cork Yarn Spinners. We'd love to see you. You know,
I'd love to come. Absolutely. I've been to Cape Clear.
Ah, Cape Clear is.
And I've kissed the Blarney Stone. In fact, everybody, when I kissed the Blarney Stone, everybody said they wondered why I was doing it.
But my mother told everyone I took a big bite out of it. She said she didn't kiss it or lick it. She ate it.
When they hung me upside down, everybody who I was with was laughing their heads off. They said, why the hell is he bothering? Right, we'll let Ali go. Okay.
Right. Night all.
Thanks,
See you soon.
thanks, Mike. Thanks,
Lovely
John.
evening.
Lovely,
Thanks
lovely
a million.
evening.
Bye-bye, bye-bye.
Thanks
See you
very
next
much, everyone.
Good night, folks.
Bye-bye, Mike.